The wedding dress hung pristine in the morning light as Lena Jensen traced her fingers along its delicate lace. The same morning, her sister's military phone began its urgent, unmistakable ring. 6 months earlier, Lieutenant Colonel Mara Jensen had promised she wouldn't miss another family moment, wouldn't choose duty over blood again. But as a photo of 2 terrified children flashed across that secure screen, both sisters knew some promises were destined to shatter. This is a story about the impossible choices that define us, about love tested by distance and duty, and about a military convoy that would arrive when everyone had given up hope. I invite you to follow this journey to its end, and please comment your city below so I can see how far our stories travel together. The coastal morning in Palmetto Grove, Georgia, carried the salt-sweet promise of celebration. Mara Jensen stood at her father's grave, the weathered headstone catching the first rays of sunlight that filtered through the Spanish moss overhead. Her dress blues were pressed to perfection, every ribbon and medal precisely aligned the uniform of someone who had given everything to service, perhaps too much. "I promise, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant crash of waves. "Today, I choose family. Today, I'm just Lena's big sister." The words felt heavy with meaning, weighted by years of missed birthdays, canceled holidays, and that devastating Christmas 3 years ago when a deployment notice arrived just as the turkey was being carved. Her fingers found the small photo tucked in her breast pocket, her and Lena, as children gap-toothed grins and matching sundresses back when promises were simple, and keeping them even simpler. Her secure phone buzzed once. She ignored it. It buzzed again. Master Sergeant Jax Torres had warned her about carrying it today. "Leave it in the safe, Colonel. Whatever happens in the world for the next 12 hours, someone else can handle it." But Mara had carried that phone for 15 years. It was like leaving behind a limb. The cemetery groundskeeper nodded respectfully as she passed. Everyone in Palmetto Grove knew the Jensen sisters, the soldier who'd become the youngest female lieutenant colonel in special operations history, and the teacher who'd held the family together while her sister saved strangers half a world away. Mara's rental car purred to life, a sensible sedan that felt foreign after years of Humvees and helicopters. The wedding venue was only 20 minutes away, but she'd planned to arrive 2 hours early. Lena had been specific about that, painfully specific. "I need you there, Mara. Not just for the ceremony. For all of it. The getting ready, the nervous laughter, the stupid traditions with something borrowed and something blue. I need my sister." The words from 6 months ago echoed as Mara navigated the familiar streets. That conversation had taken place in this very car, parked outside their childhood home after their mother's funeral. Lena's eyes had been red-rimmed, but fierce. "You missed saying goodbye to Mom because of a mission. I understood. I always understand. But if you miss my wedding," her voice had cracked. "If you choose duty over this day, we're done. I mean it, Mara. I can't keep being the sister who understands anymore." The secure phone rang. Not buzzed, rang. Only priority alpha missions triggered an actual ring. Mara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She could see the venue ahead, the rosewood plantation with its white columns wrapped in fairy lights and tulle. Wedding guests were already arriving, their colorful dresses dotting the manicured lawn like scattered petals. The phone rang again. She pulled into the parking lot, finding a space near the back. Through the windshield, she could see the bridal suite windows on the second floor. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Her sister, the bridesmaids, probably, her Aunt Martha, who'd flown in from Seattle. The third ring seemed louder, more insistent. Mara's finger hovered over the ignore button. One press, and she could pretend the call never came. She could walk into that building, zip up her sister's dress, tell embarrassing stories about their childhood, and be the maid of honor she'd promised to be. But those two children in Yemen hadn't ignored their father's work with U.S. intelligence. Those two children whose photos now filled her phone screen. A boy, maybe 7, a girl, no more than 5. They didn't get to ignore the men who'd taken them and their diplomat parents in the dead of night. 18 hours until execution, the voice on the phone was saying. General Morrison gruff and apologetic. I wouldn't call if we had anyone else, Viper, but the terrain, the complexity, your team's the only one that can pull this off. The intelligence photos scrolled past. A cave system in the Andes. Satellite imagery showing heat signatures, 4 adults, 2 children. The adults were separated from the children, a tactical move that made rescue infinitely more complicated. How long? Mara heard herself ask. Wheels up in 30 minutes. C-17's already on the tarmac at Hunter Army Airfield. 20 minutes to the airfield if she left now. Her bridesmaid dress hung in the back seat, still in its protective bag. She'd planned to change here to surprise Lena by being early for once, to prove that she could prioritize family when it mattered most. A burst of laughter from the venue made her look up. The wedding photographer was arranging the bridesmaids on the lawn for pre-ceremony photos. She could see Lena's best friend from college, Sarah, already in her lavender dress. They were laughing at something, probably the photographer's attempts to arrange them like dolls. Lena would come down soon, expecting to find her sister waiting, ready to help with last-minute preparations, to share in those precious moments before everything changed. Colonel, Morrison's voice cut through her thoughts. I need an answer. The boy in the photo had his arm around his sister, protective even in captivity. Just like Mara had once held Lena during thunderstorms, promising nothing bad would ever happen as long as Big Sister was there. Send the mission packet, she said, her voice hollow. I'm on my way. Mara. Morrison started, then stopped. I'm sorry about the timing. She ended the call and stared at her phone's blank screen. Her reflection stared back a woman in dress blues who'd just made a choice that would shatter the last solid relationship in her life. With trembling fingers, she called Lena. It rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. Of course, the bride was probably in hair and makeup phone tucked away somewhere safe. Lena, it's me. The words caught in her throat. How did you explain, how did you justify something's come up, a priority alpha? There are children and A sob escaped before she could stop it. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I love you more than you'll ever know, and I promise I'll explain everything when I get back, if you'll let me. She ended the call and threw the car into reverse tires, squealing as she pulled away. In the rearview mirror, she saw Sarah shield her eyes from the sun, looking toward the sound. Looking for her. Hunter Army Airfield was a blur of controlled chaos. Her team was already assembled, 8 of the best special operators in the military, all looking grim. They knew what this mission meant for their commander. Jax Torres handed her a tactical bag without a word, his dark eyes reflecting understanding and sympathy in equal measure. Intel's sketch, he said as they boarded. Satellite lost visual 6 hours ago. Could be weather interference, or they know we're watching. Mara stripped off her dress blues, pulling on tactical gear with practiced efficiency. The transformation from sister to soldier took less than 3 minutes, but it felt like crossing into another universe. The C-17's engines roared to life, drowning out everything except the mission. But as Palmetto Grove disappeared beneath the clouds, Mara clutched her phone, watching the missed calls from Lena start to accumulate. 1, 2, 5. Then they stopped altogether. Boss, Jax said quietly. The wedding starts in 2 hours. I know. She'll understand. Eventually. Family always. No. Mara cut him off. She won't. And she shouldn't have to. The mission briefing unfolded on multiple screens. The diplomat, Robert Harrison, had been instrumental in negotiating humanitarian aid corridors. His wife was a doctor who'd been treating refugees. Their children were just collateral leverage to ensure cooperation from the U.S. government. Demands, Mara asked, forcing herself to focus. Release of 12 prisoners from Guantanamo. Non-negotiable timeline. Which meant no negotiation at all. This was a rescue or recovery mission, nothing in between. Terrain analysis shows 3 possible entry points, the intelligence officer continued. All of them problematic. The cave system was a nightmare, multiple levels natural chimneys that could hide 100 fighters and only one known exit that was certainly being watched. It was the kind of operation that required days of planning compressed into hours of flight time. There's another complication, Jack said, pulling up a new screen. Local weather station reports an incoming storm system. Visibility will be near zero by the time we arrive. Of course there was. Mara stared at the tactical display, her mind automatically calculating angles and contingencies, while her heart counted the minutes until her sister walked down an aisle with an empty space where her maid of honor should be. Back in Palmetto Grove, Lena stood before a full-length mirror as her Aunt Martha fastened the buttons running down her spine. Each tiny pearl button was a small victory, bringing her closer to the moment she'd dreamed of since childhood. "Has anyone seen Mara?" she asked, keeping her voice light despite the knot forming in her stomach. "I'm sure she's on her way, sweetheart," Martha soothed. "You know how she is about dramatic entrances." But Lena did know her sister, and dramatic entrances weren't Mara's style. Precision was. If Mara said she'd be somewhere at a certain time, she was there. Unless, "Can someone check my phone?" Lena asked, unable to reach it in the elaborate dress. Sarah grabbed it from the vanity, her face falling as she saw the screen. "There's a voicemail." The room fell silent as Lena listened to her sister's broken apology. The phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering on the hardwood floor. Sarah caught her as her knees buckled. "She promised," Lena whispered. "She looked me in the eye and promised." "Maybe she'll still make it," Martha offered desperately. "Maybe it's a quick, priority alpha means immediate deployment," Lena said flatly. "I've been a military sister for 15 years. I know what it means." She stood slowly, smoothing her dress with hands that barely trembled. The photographer knocked, asking if they were ready for the first look photos with Jake. 5 minutes, Sarah called out, then turned to Lena. "We can postpone. Jake will understand. Everyone will—" "No." Lena's voice was steel. "I'm not postponing my life anymore. I've done that for 15 years, waiting for Mara to choose us. I'm done waiting." She picked up her bouquet white roses and baby's breath, simple and elegant. Their mother's pearl necklace lay cool against her throat. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Everything except the one person who mattered most. The C-17 shuddered through turbulence as it descended toward the drop zone. Mara's team ran through final checks, each soldier lost in their own pre-mission ritual. But she noticed them stealing glances at her, aware of what this day had cost their commander. 2 minutes to drop, the pilot announced. They'd be conducting a halo jump high-altitude low opening, dropping through the storm to avoid radar detection. It was dangerous in perfect conditions. In a storm, it was borderline suicidal. "Boss." Jax moved closer, his voice low. "My wife missed our son's first birthday for a deployment. Still hasn't forgiven herself, and that was 8 years ago." Mara met his eyes. "Your point. Let me lead this one. You can coordinate from the command post. Still save those kids, but maybe salvage something with your sister, too." It was tempting. God, it was tempting. She could hand operational command to Jax, trust her second-in-command, while she tried to minimize the damage with Lena. But she looked at the photos again, those two terrified children, and knew she couldn't. Negative. I know this terrain better than anyone. Those kids need our A-game. Roger that. Jack stepped back, but not before adding, for what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. Doesn't make it easier, but it's right. The cargo bay door opened to reveal a world of gray clouds and violence. The storm had arrived early, turning the sky into a churning mass of wind and water. Mara stood at the edge, feeling the temperature drop like a physical blow. Somewhere 8,000 miles away, her sister was walking down an aisle. She jumped. The freefall was brutal wind and rain battering her from every angle. Her altimeter spun wildly, affected by the pressure changes in the storm. This was flying by field-trusting instinct over instrument. At 2,000 feet, she deployed her chute, the violent jerk a relief after the chaos of the fall. But the storm wasn't done. A massive gust caught her canopy, sending her spinning toward a ridge she hadn't seen coming. Viper adjust, heading 20 degrees east. Jax's voice crackled through the comm. She fought the controls muscles straining against the wind. The ridge passed beneath her boots with inches to spare. Around her, she could hear her team calling out positions, everyone fighting their own battle with the storm. The landing zone was a small clearing, barely visible through the rain. She hit hard, rolling to absorb the impact, and immediately began collapsing her chute before the wind could drag her. "Sound off," she commanded, even as she pulled up the Jeep's tracker. They'd landed scattered, but alive. "Torres intact. Williams good." One by one, her team confirmed their status. 8 souls who'd voluntarily jumped into hell because she'd asked them to. The cave entrance was 2 clicks north through dense jungle. Every step was treacherous, the rain turning the ground into a river of mud. Mara's mind wanted to drift to Georgia, to imagine Lena in her dress, Jake waiting at the altar, the empty space that should have held her. A tripwire caught the light from Williams's tactical flashlight, barely visible in the rain. "Hold!" Mara hissed, raising her fist. The wire ran between 2 trees connected to what looked like anti-personnel mines. But that was too obvious, too simple for the group they were dealing with. "It's a dummy," Jax said after careful examination. "The real traps, probably." The ground beneath them groaned. "Move now." They scattered just as a section of earth gave way, revealing a pit lined with sharpened stakes. The false tripwire had been meant to make them stop exactly where the ground was weakest. "These guys know their business," Williams muttered. They did, which meant the cave system would be even worse. The entrance loomed before them, a black mouth in the mountainside that seemed to swallow light. Thermal imaging showed multiple heat signatures inside, but the rock walls made it impossible to get accurate positions. "We go in quiet," Mara decided. 2 teams. Jax take Williams, Cooper, and Smith through the secondary entrance we identified. Rest with me through the main. "That's where they'll expect us," Jax pointed out. "Exactly. We'll be the distraction while you get to the hostages." It wasn't the safest play for her team, but it gave the children the best chance. Always the children, that was the calculation that made these decisions bearable. They moved into the cave night vision goggles, turning the world into shades of green. The first chamber was empty, but Mara could feel eyes on them. Somewhere in the darkness, enemies waited. A child's cry echoed through the tunnels, impossible to locate with the acoustics. It could have come from anywhere or everywhere at once. "Steady," she whispered to her team, even as her heart clenched. In Palmetto Grove, the wedding march began. Lena stood at the back of the church, her father's absence now doubled by her sister's. Jake's cousin had volunteered to walk her down the aisle, but she'd declined. She'd walk alone the way she'd done everything else, while Mara saved the world. The guests rose as she appeared, and she saw the moment they registered the missing maid of honor. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Jake's face at the altar was a study in concern, and love, his eyes asking if she wanted to stop to wait. She shook her head slightly and took the first step. Then another. Each footfall on the white runner was a declaration she would not be the girl waiting anymore. The cave erupted in gunfire. Mara's team had triggered a sensor probably infrared, invisible to night vision. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like deadly strobe lights. She pressed herself against the cave wall, returning fire at shadows. "Contact front!" someone shouted unnecessarily. The ambush was well coordinated, overlapping fields of fire that should have been devastating. But Mara's team was better. They moved like water flowing around obstacles, each soldier covering another's advance. "Frag out," Cooper called, lobbing a grenade deeper into the cave. The explosion was deafening in the confined space, ears ringing despite protection. But it worked. The hostile fire slackened, then ceased. "Moving!" Mara announced, pushing forward into the smoke. The second chamber held bodies, 3 fighters who'd underestimated their opponents. But no hostages. The intelligence had shown them deeper in the complex, and that's where the remaining defenders would make their stand. "Boss!" Jax's voice came through the comm, tight with tension. "We've got a problem. The secondary entrance is rigged to blow. Sophisticated setup pressure plates, mercury switches. It'll take hours to disarm." Hours they didn't have. Mara checked her watch, 1400 hours local time. Back home, it would be almost time for the reception. Lena and Jake would be sharing their first dance, while she was covered in mud and blood in a Colombian cave. "Can you bypass?" she asked. "Negative. They've thought of everything." Which left only the main route through whatever defenses remained. Mara studied the tactical display, looking for options that didn't exist. "We push through," she decided. "Stack up. We breach hard and fast." It was a brutal solution, but sometimes brutal was all you had. The passage narrowed as they went deeper, forcing them into single file. Perfect for defenders, one machine gun could hold this passage indefinitely. But the hostages were running out of time, and so was any chance of salvaging her relationship with Lena. A laser tripwire glowed faintly across the tunnel. "I see it," Davis said, their explosives expert. "But this is connected to something bigger. The whole ceiling's rigged. Can you disarm it? Given an hour, maybe?" They didn't have an hour. The execution deadline was approaching, and even if they saved the hostages, extraction would take time. Storm or no storm, they needed to move. "What if we trigger it deliberately?" Mara asked. "Controlled demolition." Davis studied the setup with a professional eye. "Could work, but we'd need to be well clear, and it might seal this passage. Do it. We'll find another way out." As Davis worked, Mara allowed herself a moment to pull out her phone. No signal this deep, but she could see the last photo Lena had sent her, the two of them, at their mother's funeral, holding each other up, the last time they'd been together. "Ready?" Davis announced. 60-second fuse. They retreated to the previous chamber, taking cover behind fallen rocks. The explosion, when it came, shook the entire mountain. Dust and debris filled the air, but when it cleared, the passage was still navigable barely. "Move!" They scrambled over the rubble, racing against time and geology. The explosion would have alerted every defender left in the complex. Subtlety was dead. Now it was about speed and violence. The final chamber opened before them like a cathedral stalactites hanging like teeth from the ceiling. And there in the center were the hostages. The children were separated from their parents, just as the intelligence had suggested. The boy, Michael, according to the files, had his arm around his sister Emma, just like in the reconnaissance photos. Their parents were 20 feet away, bound and guarded by 4 men with automatic weapons. "Surrender," one of the guards shouted in accented English, "or we kill them all." It was a standoff, the kind that could go wrong 1,000 different ways. Mara's team had angles on all 4 guards, but not simultaneously. Someone would get a shot off. Someone would die. "Let the children go," Mara called out, stepping partially into view. "They're no threat to you. You think we're stupid. The children are our insurance." Little Emma was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. Michael was trying to be brave, but his whole body shook. In another life, Mara was standing beside her sister, holding the rings, making a toast about love conquering all. In this life, she was calculating firing solutions and acceptable losses. "Boss," Jax whispered through the comm. "I've got an angle on 2. Williams has 1. But the 4th, I know." The 4th guard was positioned perfectly, using Mrs. Harrison as a human shield. Any shot would go through her to reach him. Unless Mara saw it, then the formation of the stalactites above. One hung directly over the 4th guard, massive and precarious. A shaped charge in the right spot. "Davis," she subvocalized into her mic. "Can you hit the ceiling grid reference 75? Risky, could bring down more than we want. Do it on my signal." She stepped fully into the open weapon, lowered, but ready. "Let's talk terms. What do you really want? The prisoners aren't getting released, we both know that." The lead guard smiled coldly. "Then we all die together. Or," Mara continued, moving slightly to improve her angle, "you take me instead. Lieutenant Colonel Special Operations. I'm worth more than a diplomat." When it was insane, but it made them hesitate, made them think. In that moment of consideration, she gave the signal. The shaped charge detonated with surgical precision. The stalactite broke free, tons of rock plummeting toward the 4th guard. He looked up, releasing Mrs. Harrison as he tried to dodge. "Now!" The chamber erupted in controlled chaos. Mara's team fired with practiced precision, dropping the 3 visible guards before they could process what was happening. The 4th guard managed to avoid the falling stalactite, but stumbled directly into Williams' line of fire. 4 shots. 4 threats neutralized. 8 seconds total. But the damage was done in other ways. The explosion had weakened the ceiling and cracks were spreading like spider webs. "The whole thing's coming down!" Davis shouted. "We need to go now!" Mara ran to the children while Jax freed the parents. Michael wouldn't let go of his sister, so she scooped both of them up, their combined weight nothing compared to full combat gear. "Which way?" Cooper called out, as rocks began to fall. The main passage was sealed, the secondary rigged to explode. But the water, Mara could hear running water somewhere in the darkness. "Follow the sound," she commanded, sprinting toward what she hoped was salvation. The cave was collapsing behind them, a rolling wave of destruction that gained ground with every second. Mr. Harrison was limping, supported between 2 soldiers. Mrs. Harrison had Emma, now the little girl clinging to her mother, like a lifeline. The sound of water grew louder, and suddenly they burst into a chamber with an underground river flowing toward a faint glimmer of light. "We swim," Mara decided, knowing it was insane, knowing they had no choice. She went first, still carrying Michael, plunging into water so cold it stole breath. The current was strong, pulling them toward that distant light that had to be an exit. "Emma!" Mrs. Harrison screamed, as the little girl was torn from her arms by the current. Without thought, Mara released Michael to Jax and dove after the child. The water was black, impossible to see, but she could hear Emma's terrified splashing ahead. Her fingers found fabric, then an arm, and she pulled the girl against her chest. "I've got you," she gasped as they surfaced. "I've got you, baby." The exit was a waterfall, because of course it was. They went over in a rush of water and adrenaline plummeting into a pool 30 feet below. Mara turned in the air, taking the impact on her back to protect Emma. The landing drove all air from her lungs, but she kept hold of the girl, kicking desperately for the surface. They broke through, gasping Emma, coughing up water, but alive. One by one, her team and the Harrison family splashed down around them. Everyone accounted for everyone breathing. They'd done it. The extraction helicopters were waiting at the designated coordinates rotors, beating against the storm. As they lifted off, Mara finally looked at her phone. 47 missed calls, 23 text messages. The wedding was over. The reception was probably ending. She'd saved 6 lives and destroyed the most important relationship in her own. "Ma'am," the helicopter pilot called back. "General Morrison wants to know if you need priority transport back to the States." She looked at the Harrison family huddled together under thermal blankets. Michael hadn't let go of Emma's hand since they'd been reunited. Their parents were crying the kind of deep, grateful tears that came when you got back something you'd thought was lost forever. "Yes," she said quietly. "Maximum priority." But she knew it was already too late. Some missions you won, and some victories cost you everything. As the Colombian mountains disappeared below, Mara closed her eyes and saw her sister in white walking down an aisle alone, beautiful and betrayed. The storm followed them north, as if the universe itself was underlining the message you can't outrun the consequences of your choices, no matter how right they seemed at the time. The C-17's engines screamed against the storm as they climbed toward cruising altitude, but the sound couldn't drown out the silence from Mara's phone. She'd tried calling Lena 12 times since they'd lifted off from the extraction point. Each unanswered ring felt like another nail in the coffin of their relationship. "Colonel," Jax approached with a tablet, his expression carefully neutral. "Debrief materials from command." She waved him off. "Later." "Ma'am, there's something you should—" "I said later, Torres." He retreated, but not before she caught the look of concern that passed between him and Williams. They all knew what she'd sacrificed. The whole team had heard her on the sat phone during the flight to Colombia, leaving that desperate message for her sister. Mrs. Harrison approached tentatively, Emma sleeping in her arms. The little girl's face was peaceful now, a stark contrast to the terror from hours before. "Colonel Jensen." Mara looked up, trying to compose her features into something professionally appropriate. "I wanted to thank you." Mrs. Harrison continued, her voice thick with emotion. "What you did back there, diving after Emma in that water." "It's my job, ma'am." "No," Mrs. Harrison said firmly. "It was more than that. I saw your phone. I saw the dress hanging in your quarters when we boarded. You gave up something important today." The words hit harder than any bullet. Mara's throat constricted as she watched Michael curl closer to his father, safe and whole, because she'd chosen duty over love. Again. "Some things are worth it," she managed to say. Mrs. Harrison studied her for a long moment. "Are they? My husband's work has cost us a lot over the years. Missed anniversaries, birthdays, constant relocations. But we always said family came first when it really mattered." She shifted Emma gently. "I hope whoever you left behind understands that you saved our family today." As Mrs. Harrison returned to her seat, Mara pulled out her phone again. This time, instead of calling, she opened the text messages. They told a story of escalating devastation. From Sarah, 10:47 a.m. "Where are you? Lena's asking for you." From Aunt Martha, 10:15 a.m. "Sweetheart, please call us. Whatever happened, we can fix this." From Jake, 11:52 a.m. "Mara, she needs you here. Please." From Sarah, again, 12:30 p.m. "The ceremony is starting. She's walking alone." Then nothing for 2 hours. The silence during what should have been the happiest moments of her sister's life. Finally from Lena, 3:45 p.m. "Don't come back." 2 words that shattered Mara more completely than any explosion could have. She stared at them until they blurred, until Williams quietly placed a box of tissues on the armrest beside her. The storm grew worse as they flew north turbulence, throwing the massive aircraft around like a toy. In the cargo hold, the Harrison family huddled together, but Mara remained separate, isolated in her command seat, with only her failures for company. 15 minutes to Atlanta approach, the pilot announced. Towers reporting wind shear warnings. It's going to be rough. Everything about this day had been rough. Mara closed her eyes and let herself remember the last good moment with Lena 2 weeks ago over video chat. Her sister had been glowing, holding up different hair accessories, asking Mara's opinion on each one. "The pearl clips," Mara had said. "Mom would have loved those." "I wish she could be here," Lena had replied softly. "She is. In you, in the choices you make, in the love you share. She's there." Lena had smiled, then bright and genuine. "At least I'll have you." The promise had been so easy to make. Always. The landing at Dobbins Air Reserve Base was violent, the aircraft slamming onto the runway hard enough to deploy oxygen masks. But they were down. They were safe. And Mara was still 3 hours from Palmetto Grove if she drove fast enough. General Morrison was waiting on the tarmac, rain plastering his gray hair to his skull. "Outstanding work, Colonel. The President sends his personal, 'Sir, I need a vehicle. Now.'" Morrison's expression softened. "Your sister's wedding. I'm sorry about the timing. A vehicle, General, please." He nodded to an aide who jogged toward the motor pool. "Mara, you saved 6 lives today. That has to count for something." "Not to the one person who matters most." The aide returned with keys to a black SUV government plates that would let her push speed limits without consequence. Mara didn't bother changing out of her tactical gear, just grabbed the keys and ran. The drive to Palmetto Grove was a blur of rain and regret. The storm that had followed them from Columbia seemed determined to slow her progress, flooding stretching across the interstate, forcing detours through small towns she barely registered. Her phone mounted on the dashboard showed 3 new messages, all from Sarah. "Reception ending soon. She won't talk about you." Jake's family asking questions. "This is awful. Mara, whatever happened, please don't come tonight. Let her cool down first." But Mara couldn't let it end like this with silence and distance. She'd rather face Lena's anger head-on than let it fester into something permanent. The rosewood plantation appeared through the rain like something from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. The parking lot was still full, though some cars were beginning to leave. The fairy lights she'd seen that morning now reflected in puddles, creating an ethereal glow that seemed to mock the ugliness of what she'd done. She sat in the SUV for a moment, watching guests hurry to their cars under umbrellas. Everyone dressed beautifully, everyone smiling despite the weather. They'd celebrated Lena's happiness, while Mara crawled through caves half a world away. A figure appeared at the main entrance, Sarah holding her own umbrella, scanning the parking lot. Their eyes met through the rain-streaked windshield. Sarah's expression cycled through relief, anger, and finally settled on resignation. She gestured toward the service entrance away from the departing guests. Mara drove around back where the catering vans were being loaded. Sarah met her there, not bothering with the umbrella anymore, letting the rain soak through her bridesmaid dress. "You absolute idiot," Sarah said, but there was no heat in it, just exhausted sadness. "Where is she?" "The bridal suite. Jake's with her." Sarah studied Mara's appearance, the tactical gear, the mud, the bruise forming on her cheek from some impact she didn't even remember. "Jesus, Mara, you look like you've been through hell." "Something like that. Can you get her to talk to me? I've been trying for the last 6 hours to get her to talk about you at all. She just shut down, smiled for the pictures danced with Jake, thanked guests for coming, but everyone could see something was broken. Please, Sarah, just tell her I'm here. Sarah sighed, pushing wet hair from her face. Wait here. And Mara, maybe change first. You look like you're about to storm a building. She was right. Mara grabbed her bridesmaid dress from the SUV, still pristine in its protective bag, and changed in the back seat. The delicate lavender fabric felt foreign against skin that still carried the grit of combat. Her hands shook as she zipped it up the dress she should have worn hours ago standing beside her sister. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, Sarah returned her expression grim. She says no. Sarah, but Jake wants to talk to you. That was unexpected. Jake had always been peripherally friendly, the patient boyfriend who understood that Lena came with complicated family dynamics. But they'd never been close, never had a conversation that wasn't mediated by Lena's presence. He appeared in the doorway, his tuxedo jacket gone, bow tie hanging loose. He looked exhausted, older than his 32 years, and when he saw Mara, something flashed in his eyes that might have been anger or pity. Let's walk, he said, grabbing an umbrella. They moved away from the building toward the gardens that would have been beautiful in sunlight but now looked like a drowned fairy tale. Jake was silent for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. She told me about your ultimatum 6 months ago, he finally said. About choosing between your career and her. It wasn't an ultimatum, wasn't it? Jake stopped walking, turning to face her. She's been losing you for years, Mara. Every deployment, every mission, every time she had to explain to someone else why her sister couldn't make it to another life event. Today was supposed to be different. There were children. There are always children, or diplomats, or national security, or something that matters more than her. His voice wasn't accusatory, just tired. I'm not saying you're wrong. God knows someone has to do what you do. But you can't expect her to keep being collateral damage. The truth of it hit harder than Mara expected. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you made the same choice you always make, just with higher stakes. Those kids would have died. And Lena's been dying inside for years watching you choose strangers over family. Jake ran a hand through his wet hair. She loves you more than you know. Talks about you constantly. But love isn't enough if it's not paired with presence. A scream echoed from the building. Not pain, but frustration. Through a lit window, Mara could see Lena pulling pins from her elaborate hairstyle, throwing them at the mirror with sharp, violent movements. Let me go to her, Mara pleaded. No. Jake's voice was firm. Not tonight. Not when she's raw and you're desperate. It'll just make things worse. Then when? I don't know. Maybe never. That's for her to decide. He started walking back toward the building, then paused. For what it's worth, I've seen the news alerts. 6 Americans rescued from insurgents in Colombia. No names, but the timing's pretty obvious. You saved a family today. And destroyed my own. Jake didn't disagree. He just walked away, leaving Mara standing in the rain in a bridesmaid dress that marked her as belonging to a celebration she'd abandoned. She stood there for an hour, maybe 2, watching the lights in the building go out one by one. The catering staff finished loading the last guests departed, and finally she saw Lena and Jake emerge from a side door. Her sister had changed into regular clothes, the wedding dress presumably packed away with all the other remnants of what should have been a perfect day. Lena saw her. Mara knew she did, because her sister's step faltered, her hand tightening on Jake's arm. But she didn't acknowledge her, didn't even look in her direction again. They got into Jake's car and drove away, taking with them any chance of reconciliation tonight. Mara drove back to Atlanta, in a haze muscle memory navigating while her mind replayed every moment where she could have chosen differently. She could have refused the mission, could have delegated, could have trusted Jax to lead, could have, should have, would have the mantra of regret that every soldier knew by heart. Her apartment near Fort Moore was exactly as she'd left it that morning before the cemetery, before the phone call, before everything fractured. Her dress blues hung on the bedroom door. The birthday card she'd bought for Lena's upcoming birthday sat on the kitchen counter. Normal artifacts of a life that no longer existed. She showered mechanically, washing away mud and blood and failure. The bruises were starting to bloom across her ribs, where she'd hit the water protecting Emma. At least those would heal. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, but the video attachment made her heart stop. It was from the wedding someone's cell phone footage of Lena walking down the aisle alone. The videographer had caught the exact moment when Lena's composed mask slipped, showing the devastation underneath for just a second before she rebuilt her walls. The message said, "Thought you should see what you missed." Martha. Mara watched it 17 times, each viewing another form of self-torture. Her baby sister, beautiful and broken, choosing to walk alone rather than wait for someone who would never show up. The next morning brought official congratulations and unofficial judgment. General Morrison called personally to inform her that she was being recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross. The Harrison family had been debriefed and were singing her praises to anyone who would listen. "There's talk of a ceremony," Morrison said. "The president wants to meet you." "That's not necessary, sir." "It absolutely is. You exemplified the best of what we stand for. Selfless service, honor, personal courage. Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted. I fucked up." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "You saved 6 lives. And lost the only family I have left?" "Mara, I've been married 40 years. Missed more anniversaries and birthdays than I can count. But my wife understood that some things are bigger than us." "With all due respect, sir, you didn't miss your wedding to be at hers." The silence stretched until Morrison cleared his throat. "Take some leave, Colonel. That's an order. Sort out your personal affairs." But there was nothing to sort. Lena wouldn't answer calls or texts. Sarah said she needed space. Jake had been more direct. "She's asked that you not contact her. Please respect that." So Mara did the only thing she knew how to do. She worked. The after-action reports, the intelligence assessments, the recommendations for commendations for her team. Anything to avoid the echo of her empty apartment and the growing certainty that she'd finally pushed too far. 3 days after the wedding, Jax showed up at her door with a 6-pack and a pizza. "Thought you might need company," he said, inviting himself in. "I'm fine." "Boss, with all due respect, you look like shit." She did. She hadn't been sleeping, hadn't been eating. The Distinguished Service Cross recommendation sat on her coffee table like an accusation, highest honor, highest cost. "Want to talk about it?" Jax asked, settling on her couch like he belonged there. "No." "Tough." They sat in silence for a while, drinking beer and pretending to watch a game neither cared about. Finally, Jax spoke again. "My dad was career military. Missed everything that mattered, chasing ribbons and ranks. Mom finally divorced him when I was 15. He died alone in a VA hospital, surrounded by medals but no family. Jax, I swore I'd be different, and mostly I have been. But there are times when I see myself becoming him, choosing the mission over the moments." He turned to look at her. "You saved those kids, Mara. That matters. But if you don't fix this with your sister, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. She won't talk to me. Then make her. You infiltrated a hostile cave system in a hurricane. You telling me you can't figure out how to get through to one elementary school teacher in Georgia. But Lena wasn't just any elementary school teacher. She was the girl who'd hidden under Mara's bed during thunderstorms, who'd sent care packages to every deployment, who'd held their mother's hand when Mara couldn't make it back in time, who'd finally reached her limit. That night, unable to sleep again, Mara wrote a letter. Not a text or email that could be deleted unread, but an actual letter handwritten on the good stationery their mother had always insisted on keeping. "Dear Lena," she began, then crossed it out. Too formal. "Baby sister," she tried again, then scratched that too. Too presumptuous. Finally, she just wrote, "I know you don't want to hear from me." The letter took 6 hours and dozens of drafts. In it, she didn't make excuses or offer explanations. She simply told the truth about the children, about the choice, about the weight of knowing she'd broken the one promise that mattered most. She included a photo from the mission debrief, Emma Harrison, asleep in her mother's arms, safe, because of decisions that had cost Mara everything. She mailed it the next morning, no return address, nothing to indicate it required a response. Just truth offered into the void, hoping it might build a bridge back to the person she loved most. A week passed. Then 2. The Distinguished Service Cross ceremony was scheduled, and Mara requested it be private, no media, no fanfare. But somehow word got out. The Harrison family wanted to attend. Her team insisted on being there. Even General Morrison's wife called to say she'd be present. Everyone except the one person who mattered. The morning of the ceremony, Mara stood in her dress blues again, every medal perfectly aligned, looking at a reflection she barely recognized. The soldier staring back had saved countless lives, earned endless accolades, and lost the only battle that truly mattered. Her phone buzzed. "Sarah." "She read your letter." Mara's heart stopped. "And just thought you should know." The ceremony was held in a small conference room at Fort Moore, intimate, despite the brass in attendance. Mr. Harrison spoke about the moment he thought he'd never see his children again. Mrs. Harrison cried as she described hearing Emma scream in the water and watching Mara dive after her without hesitation. Michael Brave, at 7 years old, stood at attention and saluted the woman who'd carried him through hell. General Morrison read the commendation words about valor and sacrifice that felt hollow to Mara. When he pinned the medal to her uniform, she felt its weight like an anchor dragging her toward a future of similar choices and similar losses. "Response," Morrison prompted quietly, expecting the traditional acceptance speech. Mara looked at the assembled crowd, soldiers who understood duty, families who understood sacrifice, everyone who understood except the one person whose understanding she needed. "The hardest battles," she began slowly, "aren't always the ones we fight in uniform. Sometimes the greatest courage is choosing presence over purpose, family over glory, love over duty. I stand here today with this honor, but I need you all to know it came at a cost that no medal can justify." The room was silent. This wasn't how these speeches went. You thanked your team, praised your country, and promised continued service. You didn't admit that heroism could be a mistake. "To the Harrison family," she continued, "I'm grateful your family is whole. Hold each other tight. Never take for granted the moments you have together. They're worth more than all the medals in the world." She stepped back, ending the shortest acceptance speech in the history of such ceremonies. Morrison looked confused, the audience uncertain, but Mara didn't care. She'd spoken her truth. As people filed out offering congratulations that felt like condolences, Emma Harrison broke free from her mother and ran to Mara. The little girl wrapped her arms around Mara's legs, holding on tight. "Thank you for saving us," Emma whispered. Mara knelt down to Emma's level, remembering another little girl who used to hug her just like this. You're welcome, sweetheart. My mommy says you missed something important to help us. I did. Emma studied her with those serious eyes children had when they were processing big thoughts. Was it worth it? The question everyone was too polite to ask, delivered with 5-year-old honesty. You're worth everything, Mara said, meaning it. But some prices are too high to pay twice. That evening, Mara sat alone in her apartment, the Distinguished Service Cross on the coffee table beside her laptop. She was writing her resignation letter, each word a small death, but also a liberation. 20 years of service about to end with a simple email. Her phone rang. Unknown. Georgia number. Hello. Breathing on the other end then. I saw the news coverage. Lena. Mara's throat closed entirely. They interviewed the family you saved. The little girl especially. She called you her guardian angel. Lena, don't. Just don't. I called to tell you something. Mara waited, afraid to breathe, afraid to hope. I'm pregnant. The words landed like a physical blow. What? 8 weeks. I found out the morning of the wedding. I was going to tell you after the ceremony, make you promise to be there for this baby the way you couldn't be for me. The weight of it crashed over Mara, not just missing the wedding, but missing this moment, this news that should have been shared in joy instead of anger. Congratulations, Mara managed to say. Jake must be. He's thrilled, scared, but thrilled. And you. A long pause. I'm terrified I'm going to do to this child what Mom did to us. Love them but lose them to someone else's needs. Mom didn't. She did Mara. She loved Dad, but his career killed him and left her to raise us alone. Then I watched you follow the same path, and I swore I'd never marry someone who could choose duty over family. Jake's a teacher. He coaches Little League. He'll never miss a recital for a revolution. The unspoken accusation hung between them that Mara would miss everything just like their father had. I want to be there, Mara said quietly. For you, for the baby, for all of it. How you'll get another call, another mission with children who need saving, and you'll go. You always go. Not anymore. What? I'm resigning. Effective immediately. The silence stretched so long Mara thought the call had dropped. Then Lena laughed, bitter and disbelieving. You can't resign who you are, Mara. Being a soldier isn't what you do, it's who you are. Then I'll become someone else. For how long? Until the next crisis. The next call you can't ignore. Forever, if that's what it takes. I can't do this, Lena said suddenly. I can't have this conversation. I can't let you make promises you won't keep. I can't watch you try to change and fail and break my heart again. Lena, please. The baby's due in April. I'll send you an announcement. Don't come to the hospital. Don't come to Georgia. Just don't. The line went dead. Mara stared at the phone, then at the resignation letter, then at the medal that had cost her everything. Outside the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and red like fire, like blood, like all the choices that couldn't be undone. She deleted the resignation letter, not because she'd changed her mind, but because resigning wasn't enough. She needed to do more than quit. She needed to transform entirely to prove that people could change, that soldiers could become something else, that sisters could find their way back to each other. That night she called General Morrison. Sir, I need to request a different kind of assignment. Mara, if this is about the ceremony. It's about everything, sir. I want to transition to training. Specifically, I want to develop a program for operators struggling with work-life balance. Suicide rates, divorce rates, the cost of service on families, we need to address it. Morrison was quiet for a moment. That's a significant shift from special operations. Yes, sir, it is. The Army invested a lot in your tactical development. And now I want to invest in keeping families together. Another pause. I'll make some calls, no promises. It wasn't forgiveness from Lena, wasn't a path back to her sister's life, but it was a start. A different kind of mission one, where the objective wasn't saving strangers, but learning to save the people who mattered most. As she hung up, a text came through from Sarah. She kept your letter. That's something. It was something. In a day full of endings, it was the smallest beginning. But sometimes that's all you get. Not the dramatic rescue or the perfect resolution, just the tiniest crack in the door that might someday open wide enough to walk through. The assignment Morrison secured for her was at Fort Benning's Warrior Transition Battalion, working with soldiers whose bodies had come home, but whose minds remained in combat zones. It wasn't the prestigious position she'd held before, but Mara approached it with the same intensity she'd once reserved for hostile extractions. Her first day, she stood before a room of broken warriors, men and women missing pieces of themselves, both visible and invisible. They looked at her ribbons and medals with the particular disdain reserved for officers who hadn't paid the same physical price. "I know what you're thinking," she began, abandoning her prepared remarks. "Another brass telling you how to adjust, how to cope, how to move forward. But I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here because I lost my family to this uniform, and maybe together we can figure out how not to lose anything else." The silence shifted from hostile to curious. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, missing his left leg from an IED in Syria, raised his hand. "You're the one who missed her sister's wedding for that Columbia thing." Word traveled fast in the military community. "Yeah. My wife left me while I was in recovery," Rodriguez said. "Took the kids. Said she couldn't compete with a ghost anymore." "Mine hasn't spoken to me in 3 months," Mara replied. "She's pregnant. I'll probably never meet my niece or nephew." The admission broke something open in the room. Stories poured out, marriages destroyed by deployments, children who didn't recognize their parents, families scattered by the demands of service. By the end of the session, Mara had abandoned any pretense of traditional instruction. This was group therapy disguised as professional development, and everyone knew it. That evening she called Sarah for her weekly update, the only connection to Lena's life she was permitted. "How is she? Showing now. Had the anatomy scan yesterday. And healthy baby girl." A girl. Mara closed her eyes, imagining a little version of Lena, all stubborn determination and fierce love. A niece she might never know. "Did she ask about me?" Sarah's pause was answer enough. "She's focused on preparing. Jake's converted the spare room into a nursery, very pink." "That's good." "Mara, I have to ask this new assignment. This change, is it real? Or are you just marking time until the next crisis pulls you back?" "It's real. Because if you hurt her again, I know." But knowing and proving were different things. Every day at Fort Benning tested her resolve. When news broke of a hostage situation in Morocco, her phone lit up with calls from former colleagues. When an ambassador's family went missing in the Philippines, Morrison himself reached out just to check if she'd reconsider. Each time she said no. Each refusal felt like cutting off a piece of herself, but she held Lena's last words close. "You can't resign who you are." Maybe not, but she could evolve. The program she developed started gaining attention. Operation Homecoming, she called it, not about returning from deployment, but about truly coming home fully present. She brought in family therapists, had soldiers role-play difficult conversations with spouses, created workshops on translating military skills to family life. Rodriguez became her unofficial co-facilitator. His experience with loss gave him credibility. Mara's rank couldn't buy. Together, they built something unprecedented. A space where warriors could admit that the hardest battles were the ones fought in living rooms and bedrooms, not battlefields. December arrived with unusual cold for Georgia. Lena would be 7 months pregnant now, probably complaining about swollen feet and weird cravings. Mara had so many memories of their mother pregnant with Lena, how she'd let 5-year-old Mara feel the baby kick, promising that she was growing a best friend. She was in her office reviewing program metrics when her secretary knocked. "Colonel, there's someone here to see you." Mara's heart leaped. Maybe Lena had finally, but it was Jake who stood in her doorway looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes among so many uniforms. "We need to talk," he said. They walked to the same spot where she'd stood with Morrison months ago, accepting the assignment that had brought her here. Jake was quiet for a long moment, watching soldiers train in the distance. "She's not okay," he finally said. "She pretends goes through all the motions, but something's broken." "I broke it." "No, that's the thing. It was broken before. Your mom's death, your dad before that, years of being the one left behind. The wedding was just the final crack." He turned to face her. "She needs her sister." She said, "I know what she said, but pregnancy hormones and stubbornness are a dangerous combination. She cries at night, Mara. Not dramatic tears, just these quiet, hopeless sounds that terrify me." The image gutted Mara more than any combat wound could have. "She won't see me," Mara said. "I've respected her wishes. Maybe it's time to stop respecting and start fighting. You've infiltrated hostile territory before, right? You're suggesting I ambush my pregnant sister. I'm suggesting you show up, not as Colonel Jensen, not as the hero who saves strangers, just as her big sister who made a mistake and wants to make it right." Jake pulled out an ultrasound image. The baby was in profile, perfect, and delicate thumb in her mouth. "Her name's going to be Emma. Like the girl from... Yeah, Lena said if you could choose a stranger's Emma over her, maybe she could learn to love this Emma, enough for both of you." The words were cruel, but Mara understood the impulse. Pain made people sharp, turned love into weapons. "There's a Christmas party at the school where she teaches," Jake continued. "December 20th, 6 p.m. She's organizing it, can't skip out. If you happen to be there..." "Jake, I can't ambush her at work." "Then where she won't answer your calls, won't open your letters. At some point you have to decide if respecting her boundaries matters more than fixing this." After he left, Mara sat with the ultrasound image tracing the tiny profile with one finger. Emma. A name that would forever remind them both of the choice that shattered everything. That night, she called Jax. "I need a favor." "Anything, boss?" "I need you to run the program for a few days. I have a mission." "Thought you were out of that business." "Different kind of mission. One that matters more than all the others combined." December 20th came gray and cold. Mara drove to Palmetto Grove in civilian clothes, jeans and a sweater that made her feel like she was wearing a costume. She'd bought a gift for the baby wrapped inexpertly in paper, covered with tiny reindeer. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate and perfect, engraved with "Always loved Aunt M." The elementary school was festooned with construction paper snowflakes and cotton ball snow. Parents and children filled the gymnasium, the noise overwhelming after months of military precision. Mara stood in the doorway, scanning for Lena. She found her by the punch bowl, radiant in a green dress that emphasized her pregnancy. She was laughing at something another teacher said, but Mara could see the performance in it, the way her hand kept going to her back, supporting the weight she wasn't used to carrying. Mara took a step forward, then another. Parents and children flowed around her, oblivious to the drama about to unfold. She was halfway across the gym when Lena looked up. Their eyes met across the chaos of Christmas celebration. Lena's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, something that might have been hope before it was quickly suppressed. She said something to the other teacher and walked toward the exit, not running but moving with purpose. Mara followed. They ended up in an empty classroom, children's artwork covering every wall. Lena stood by the window, one hand on her belly, not looking at Mara. "You can't be here." "I know. I specifically told you, I know." "Then why?" Lena turned, and Mara could see she'd been crying recently, mascara slightly smudged despite efforts to repair it. "Because Jake's scared. Because you're crying at night. Because there's a little girl named Emma who deserves to have her aunt in her life." "Don't." Lena's voice was sharp. "Don't use my baby to manipulate. I'm not. I'm stating facts. I screwed up, Lena. I made an impossible choice and I chose wrong. Not because saving those kids was wrong, but because I should have found another way. There's always another way." "But you didn't look for it." "No, I didn't. I fell back on trained responses, on duty and honor, and all the things that have always mattered more than they should." Lena laughed, bitter and tired. "And now what?" "You've had a revelation, you've changed. People don't change, Mara. They just get better at pretending." "Maybe. Or maybe they get broken enough that they have to rebuild differently." Mara pulled out a folder she'd been carrying. "This is everyone I've worked with in the last 4 months. Soldiers whose families left them, who chose duty until they had nothing else. We're learning together how to choose differently." Lena glanced at the papers, but didn't take them. "Good for them." Rodriguez lost his kids in a custody battle while he was recovering from losing his leg. Thompson's wife filed for divorce the day he got his Purple Heart. Stevens hasn't seen his daughter in 2 years because he kept volunteering for deployments instead of dealing with his marriage problems. Mara set the folder on a desk. "Every one of them wishes they'd made different choices. I'm trying not to become another cautionary tale." "You already are." The words landed like a slap, but Mara absorbed it. She'd earned worse. "I know, but cautionary tales can have second chapters." "Not this one." Lena moved toward the door, but stopped, swaying slightly. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. She's just active today." Lena's hand went to her side, breathing through what was obviously discomfort. "How often are you having those, 'It's just Braxton Hicks' practice contractions?" But Mara had seen enough to recognize pain being minimized. "How often, Lena?" "Every few hours. It's normal." "Have you called your doctor?" "Stop it!" Lena's voice was fierce. "Stop pretending you care. Stop acting like you have any right to be concerned." "I never stopped caring. You just stopped showing up." "Yes." The simple admission seemed to deflate Lena's anger. She sank into a tiny plastic chair designed for 6-year-olds, looking exhausted. "I used to defend you," she said quietly. "Every missed birthday, every canceled plan. I'd tell people you were saving the world, that it mattered more than dance recitals or Christmas dinners. I was so proud of my hero sister." "Lena." "But then Mom got sick, and you were in Afghanistan, and then Iraq, and then Somalia. She asked for you at the end, did you know that?" Not coherently, but she'd mumble your name looking at the door like you might walk through it. Mara hadn't known that. The hospice had said their mother was mostly unconscious those last days. "I held her hand and pretended to be you sometimes. Told her about missions you'd probably never tell her about, made up stories about your heroics. She'd smile even through the morphine haze." Lena's hand went to her belly again. "I promised myself I'd never wait for someone who couldn't prioritize me. Then I fell in love with Jake, who's never missed anything, never chosen anything over us, and I still kept waiting for you. I'm here now." "For how long?" Before Mara could answer, another contraction hit. Lena tried to hide it, But Mara saw the white knuckles, the controlled breathing that spoke of real pain, not practice. When did these really start? This morning. Lena, you need to go to the hospital. It's too early. I'm only 32 weeks. And in active labor. Come on. Mara moved to help her up, but Lena pulled away. I'll call Jake. He's 30 minutes away at basketball practice. I'm here now. They stared at each other, years of hurt and love tangled between them. Then another contraction hit stronger, and Lena gasped. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Mara supported her sister's weight as they walked to the parking lot, calling Jake on the way. His panic was audible through the phone, but Mara stayed calm, giving him directions to the hospital, promising she wouldn't leave Lena alone. The drive was tense, Lena gripping the door handle through contractions that were coming every 4 minutes now. Too fast, too early. Remember when you broke your arm? Mara said, trying to distract her. You were so mad that you couldn't climb the rope in gym class. I was 8. Climbing that rope was everything. You made me practice with you every day once the cast came off. Insisted you'd be the fastest in the class. And I was. Lena managed a small smile. You tied the rope to the oak tree in the backyard. Dad was furious. Worth it to see your face when you rang that bell at the top. Another contraction. Lena's breathing went ragged. Almost there, Mara promised, pulling into the hospital emergency entrance. The medical team took over with professional efficiency, wheeling Lena away, while Mara handled paperwork she shouldn't have known the answers to, but did blood type allergies, previous medical history. Being a sister meant carrying someone's details even when they'd cut you out. Jake arrived as they were admitting Lena, still in his coaching clothes, face pale with worry. He started to tell Mara she could go, then stopped. Stay, he said. Please, she needs you even if she won't admit it. The next hours blurred together. Doctors trying to stop the labor with medication, monitoring the baby's heart rate, discussing scenarios that all sounded terrifying. Mara stayed in the hallway, close enough if needed, but respecting the boundary of the room where Lena labored. At 11:47 p.m., everything changed. Alarms started going off, medical staff running. Through the doorway, Mara heard the words that stopped her heart. Fetal distress. We need to move now. Jake emerged, looking lost. Emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate. They said... He couldn't finish. Mara grabbed his shoulders. She's strong. They both are. Come with me, Jake said suddenly. Lena's scared. She won't ask, but I saw her looking for you. They were already wheeling Lena toward surgery when Mara entered. Her sister looked so small on the gurney, tears streaming down her face. I'm here, Mara said, taking her hand. Lena gripped back with desperate strength. If something happens, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, promise me you'll be there for her. Really there, not just sending Christmas cards and college funds. Promise me, Mara. I promise. But you're going to be fine. You're the strongest person I know. I'm not you. No, Mara said firmly. You're stronger. You stayed. You built a life, a family. You loved even when it hurt. That's harder than anything I've ever done. They reached the surgical doors where Mara couldn't follow. Lena held on for one more second. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. I just stopped hoping you'd choose me. Then she was gone through doors that shut with devastating finality. The waiting was agony. Jake paced while Mara stood perfectly still, a soldier's discipline masking internal chaos. 43 minutes longer than a standard C-section should take. Finally, a cry. Tiny but fierce, unmistakably alive. The doctor emerged, smiling. Mom's stable baby's in NICU but breathing on her own. 3 pounds, 12 ounces. Small but mighty. Like her mother, Mara said. Jake was allowed in first, of course, but 20 minutes later he came to get her. Lena's asking for you. Her sister looked exhausted but radiant despite the IVs and monitors. They won't let me see her yet. She's in an incubator, needs help staying warm. She'll be okay. Jake said you stayed. You asked me to. No, I mean, you stayed. Didn't answer your phone even though it rang 3 times. Mara hadn't even noticed. Her phone was still on silent, probably full of messages she'd never check. There's nowhere else I needed to be. Lena studied her for a long moment. I named her Emma Grace. Grace because maybe we both need some. It's perfect. I'm still mad at you. I know. It doesn't just go away because you showed up today. I know that too. But, Lena's voice broke. I'm glad you were here. I was so scared, and then you were holding my hand, and for a second it was like before everything got complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated anymore. Doesn't it? You have a career responsibilities. I have a family. Everything else is just a job. Jake returned then with a photo on his phone. Tiny Emma in her incubator, a knit cap covering her head, wires monitoring her every breath. She was perfect a fighter from her first moments. She's got the Jensen stubborn streak, Jake said. Nurse said she kept pulling at her breathing tube until they removed it like she was insulted they thought she needed help. Definitely a Jensen then, Lena said, smiling through tears. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the 3 of them looking at Emma's photo, pretending the last months hadn't happened. But reality crept back, as it always did. I should go, Mara said eventually. Let you rest. Where are you staying? I'll find a hotel. The house has a guest room. Jake offered, then looked at Lena. If that's okay. Lena was quiet for so long, Mara assumed the answer was no. Then softly, the blue key hidden under the ceramic frog. You remember where, the same hiding spot from their childhood home. I remember. Just tonight. We'll figure out the rest later. It was more than Mara had dared hope for. She squeezed Lena's hand once, then left, before either could change their mind. Jake and Lena's house was exactly what she'd expected, warm, lived-in photos covering every surface. The nursery was indeed very pink, with a rocking chair by the window and a mobile of stars hanging over the crib that would now stay empty for weeks, while Emma grew stronger. Mara sat in that rocking chair as dawn broke, holding the gift she'd brought, wondering if she'd ever get to give it to her niece. Her phone had 17 missed calls, 4 from Morrison himself. She turned it off completely. For the first time in 20 years, the outside world could wait. Her family needed her, and this time she'd chosen correctly. The next morning brought challenges. Emma needed a breathing treatment, her tiny lungs working harder than they should. Lena developed a fever, her body fighting infection. Jake tried to be everywhere at once, supporting his wife while checking on his daughter, exhaustion making him clumsy. Go home, Mara told him. Shower, eat something real, sleep for a few hours. I'll stay. Lena won't. I'll handle Lena. Go. He went too tired to argue. Mara took his place in Lena's room, not speaking unless spoken to, just present. When Lena needed water, she got it. When the pain medication made her sick, Mara held the basin and wiped her face after. This is weird, Lena said around noon. Which part? You here, taking care of me. It's usually the other way around. Maybe it's time for that to change. Sarah arrived that afternoon, stopping short when she saw Mara. Hell has officially frozen over, she said, but she was smiling. Sarah, Lena started. Nope, not getting in the middle of whatever this is. I'm just here to meet my goddaughter and bring you real food because hospital jello is a crime against humanity. The normalcy helped. Sarah's chatter, the gossip from town, complaints about hospital parking. It all felt like maybe things could be okay. Not fixed, not yet, but possible. That evening, they finally let Lena visit Emma in the NICU. She could only stay for 30 minutes, but Mara watched through the window as her sister placed a gentle hand on the incubator, whispering to her daughter, promising her everything would be okay. "She looks like you did," Mara said when Lena was wheeled back. "Same nose, same determined chin." "Mom said I was born fighting too. 3 weeks early, convinced I had places to be." "You did. You had a world to conquer. I just wanted to catch up to you." Lena's admission was quiet. "Everything you did seemed so important, so big. I wanted to matter like that." "You do matter. You shape kids' lives every day. You built a marriage that works. You're going to raise an amazing daughter. That's conquering the world in ways I never could." "When did you get wise?" "Somewhere between losing you and finding you again." Jake returned, bringing dinner and updates from the outside world that none of them particularly cared about. They ate together in Lena's room, carefully avoiding anything too heavy, keeping conversation light. But underneath something was rebuilding fragile as Emma, but just as determined to survive. The NICU became their world for the next 3 weeks, a strange limbo where time moved differently. Mara had officially taken emergency leave the first time in her career she'd used those words for actual family emergency rather than coded mission prep. Every morning she arrived at 6, bringing Jake coffee and Lena. Whatever craving had struck during the sleepless night, pickles and ice cream Chinese takeout for breakfast, once an entire key lime pie that Lena ate while crying over Emma's tiny fingers. "She grabbed my pinky today," Lena said on day 10, wonder in her voice, like she'd witnessed a miracle. Which maybe she had. Emma was gaining weight slowly, each ounce a victory celebrated by the entire NICU staff. The nurses had started calling her Little Fighter, and Mara could see why. Even at barely 4 pounds, Emma had a presence, a determination that seemed impossible in something so small. "She gets that from you," Mara told Lena during one of their vigils. "From both of us. The Jensen women don't quit." It was the first time Lena had included her in that statement since the wedding, and Mara felt something crack open in her chest, painful and necessary. Morrison called on day 12, his voice carefully neutral. "Colonel, we need to discuss your return date." "Sir, I'm requesting an extension." "Mara, you've already been gone 2 weeks. The program needs... Rodriguez is handling it perfectly. I'm getting daily reports." "This isn't about the program." Morrison's tone shifted, becoming more personal. "There's a situation developing in Eastern Europe. High-value target potential mass casualty event. The kind of thing that... No." The word came out sharp, final. Mara was standing in the hospital corridor watching through glass as Lena sang softly to Emma, the baby's monitors beeping in rhythm like the world's strangest accompaniment. "Mara, respectfully, sir, no, find someone else." "There is no one else with your specific expertise." "Then it's time to develop that expertise in others. I'm not leaving my family again." The silence stretched long enough that Mara wondered if he'd hung up. Then Morrison sighed. "I'll need your answer on the program director position by end of month. It's yours if you want it, but if not, we need to move forward with other candidates." "Understood, sir." After she hung up, Mara stood there for a moment feeling the weight of the road not taken. Somewhere in Eastern Europe, something terrible might happen because she wasn't there to stop it. But inside this room, her sister was learning to be a mother, and that mattered more than any mission ever could. Jake found her there an hour later, looking haggard. He'd been pulling double duty teaching all day, then spending nights at the hospital. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, you..." Honestly terrified. What if something happens when we take her home? What if we're not ready? Nobody's ever ready. You just figure it out as you go. Speaking from experience, from watching every parent I've ever known, including ours. Mara paused. Dad was terrified when Lena was born. Mom told me he practiced diaper changes on a teddy bear for weeks. The Colonel practiced diapers for hours, said it was like ordnance disposal, one wrong move, and everything goes to shit. Jake laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd heard from him since Emma's birth. That actually helps. He wasn't perfect, wasn't even good at balancing everything. But he loved us. That counted for something. Think Lena will ever really forgive you? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. I don't know. But forgiveness and healing aren't the same thing. Maybe we can heal even if she can't forgive. That night, Emma had her first serious setback. Her oxygen levels dropped suddenly, sending the NICU into controlled chaos. Lena wasn't allowed in while they worked, so she stood at the window, hands pressed against the glass, Jake holding her as she sobbed. She was doing so well, Lena kept saying. She was getting stronger. Mara wanted to promise everything would be okay, but she'd learned the weight of broken promises. Instead, she stood with them, present in the fear, until the doctor emerged 40 minutes later with cautious optimism. Emma had stabilized, though they'd increased her oxygen support. It's not uncommon, the doctor assured them. Preemies often take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it were vastly different. Lena refused to leave that night, and hospital policy be damned, Mara and Jake stayed too. They took shifts, sitting beside Emma's incubator, making sure she was never alone, that if she opened her eyes, she'd see family. Around 3 a.m., Mara was alone with Emma when the baby's eyes fluttered open. They were blue like Lena's, like their mother's, and for a moment they seemed to focus on Mara's face. "Hey, little warrior," Mara whispered. "You're scaring your mom. How about we work on that breathing so you can go home?" Emma's tiny hand moved, fingers spreading like she was reaching for something. Mara slipped her pinky through the incubator port, letting Emma grasp it. The grip was stronger than seemed possible. "That's my girl. Fighter from day one." "She knows you." Mara turned to find Lena watching from the doorway, exhaustion making her look fragile. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." Lena moved closer, sinking into the chair Jake had vacated. "I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing differently." "Yeah. Do you really think people can change fundamentally?" Mara considered the question, watching Emma's chest rise and fall. "I think we can choose different priorities, make different decisions. Whether that's change or growth, I don't know. Mom used to say people show you who they are in crisis. That's when the real person comes out." "What do you think?" "I think you jumped into freezing water to save a stranger's child. And I think you sat in this hospital for 2 weeks when the army called you to save the world again." Lena's voice was thoughtful, not accusatory. "Maybe both of those are who you really are." "Maybe. But I can only be one of them going forward." "Can you really give up the adrenaline, the purpose, the knowing you're making a difference?" "I'm making a difference with the transition program. Different kind of saving." "It's not the same." "No," Mara admitted. "It's not. But you and Emma and Jake, you're my mission now. The only one that matters." Lena was quiet for a long moment, then reached over and took Mara's free hand. "I want to believe you. But I've been the girl waiting for you my whole life, waiting for you to come home from deployments, to make it to birthdays, to choose us. I can't be that girl anymore, and I won't let Emma be that girl either. I'm not asking you to wait anymore. I'm here. For now. Forever, if you'll let me." Before Lena could respond, Emma's monitors alarmed again. This time, though, it was good news she was fighting the ventilator, trying to breathe over it. The respiratory therapist made adjustments, and within an hour, Emma was breathing with less support. "See?" Mara said. "Jensen women don't quit." Christmas Eve arrived with unexpected warmth, the Georgia winter refusing to commit to actual cold. Emma had been in the NICU for 17 days, and the doctors were finally talking about discharge. "Maybe by New Year's, Doctor," Patterson said, reviewing Emma's chart. "She needs to maintain her temperature and finish all her feeds by bottle, but she's close." Jake had insisted on maintaining some Christmas traditions, despite everything bringing a tiny artificial tree to the NICU and decorating it with lights small enough not to disturb the babies. Other parents had added to it until their corner became a beacon of hope in the medical sterility. "I got you something," Lena said that evening, pulling out a wrapped package. Mara was surprised. "Lena, you didn't need to open it." Inside was a framed photo Mara had never seen herself at maybe 7, holding newborn Lena with their parents hovering protectively. Their father was in uniform, their mother radiant despite exhaustion. They looked like a perfect family, captured in a moment before everything got complicated. "Where did you find this Mom's things? There was a whole box I'd never gone through, too painful after the funeral. But Jake helped me last week, and we found dozens of pictures. Us at Christmas birthdays, random Tuesday afternoons. Evidence that we were happy once. We were. We could be again, maybe, if we work at it." It wasn't forgiveness, not quite, but it was possibility. Mara held the photo carefully, like the precious thing it was. "I have something for you, too," she said, pulling out the small wrapped box she'd been carrying since December 20th. "Dean, actually for Emma, but—" Lena opened it, revealing the silver bracelet. The engraving caught the light. "Always loved Aunt M." "It's beautiful. There's a matching one being made for when she's older, a reminder that she has an aunt who will always be there. Will you—" The question wasn't accusatory, just careful. "Yes. No matter what else happens, yes." That night they were allowed to hold Emma for the first time without wires and tubes attached. She was still tiny, still fragile, but for 5 precious minutes, she was just a baby in her mother's arms. Lena cried the entire time, happy tears that Jake tried to capture on camera, but mostly just created blurry memories. "Your turn," Lena said, offering Emma to Mara. "Are you sure? She should know her aunt. The real one, not the legend I'd build if you disappeared again." Mara took Emma, carefully amazed at how light she was, how perfect. The baby yawned a tiny, perfect O that made everyone laugh. "Hi, Emma. I'm your Aunt Mara. I'm the one who's going to teach you to climb trees and shoot straight and drive your parents crazy. But I'm also going to be there for every school play, every soccer game, every broken heart. That's a promise I intend to keep." Emma's eyes opened, unfocused, but present, and her tiny hand escaped the swaddle to wave aimlessly. Mara caught it, letting those impossible small fingers wrap around hers. "She's strong," she said. "Like her aunt," Lena replied, then caught herself. "Both her aunts. Sarah's already planning to teach her to paint." The moment of connection passed as Emma started to fuss, ready to return to her controlled environment. But something had shifted a door opening that had been locked for months. Morrison called again on December 27th. This time, Mara was ready. "I want the director position," she said before he could speak, "but with conditions." "I'm listening." "The program expands to all bases in the Southeast. We create family integration modules, bring in spouses and children for sessions. Make it about saving military families, not just soldiers." "That's ambitious." "That's necessary. We're losing more veterans to suicide than combat. Their families are collateral damage. If we really want to support our troops, we support their whole lives." Morrison was quiet, and she could hear papers rustling. "The Pentagon won't like the budget implications. The Pentagon doesn't have to bury soldiers who couldn't figure out how to come home. I do. Their families do." "You've changed Mara." "Yes, sir. I have." "Submit a formal proposal. I'll push it through." After the call, Mara sat in the hospital cafeteria sketching out ideas on napkins, a comprehensive program that addressed the full spectrum of military family life. It felt important in a different way than combat missions less immediate, but potentially more lasting. "That looks intense," Jake said, appearing with coffee. "New project. How's Lena? Pumping. Glamorous stuff, motherhood." He sat down, studying her notes. "This is good, really good. Think it'll work. I think you've never failed at anything you really committed to." He paused. "Except maybe the sister thing, but you're fixing that." "Trying to. Can I ask you something? The missions, the deployments, do you miss it?" Mara thought about lying, giving the easy answer. But Jake deserved truth. Every day. It's like a physical ache sometimes. The clarity of purpose, the adrenaline knowing exactly what needs to be done and doing it. But Emma's sleeping through the night now. Lena smiled at me yesterday without thinking about it first. You brought me coffee without being asked. Those things matter more. Even though they're smaller. Maybe because they're smaller. Anyone can be a hero in a crisis. It's harder to show up for the ordinary moments. Jake raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. To ordinary moments. To family. They drank in comfortable silence, two people who'd found unexpected alliance in loving the same complicated woman. New Year's Eve day brought the news they'd been waiting for. Emma could go home. 5 pounds, 2 ounces of miracle ready to face the world. The NICU nurses gathered to say goodbye, many of them crying as they'd watched this particular fight so closely. "You call if you need anything," the head nurse said, hugging Lena, "even at 2 a.m. when you're panicking about her breathing." "How did you know I'd panic about breathing?" "Because every preemie parent does. It's normal. You're all going to be fine." The drive home was surreal. Jake drove like he was transporting nuclear material 5 miles under the speed limit, stopping so gradually at lights that Lena laughed through her nervousness. Mara followed in her rental, carrying all the supplies that had accumulated over 3 weeks. The house felt different with Emma in it, like it had been waiting to become complete. They settled her in the nursery, the pink room finally serving its purpose. Emma slept through the homecoming unimpressed by the fuss. "I should go," Mara said as evening approached. "Let you settle in as a family." "Stay," Lena said suddenly. "For New Year's. Start it right for once." "Are you sure?" "No, but I want to try." So Mara stayed. They ordered Chinese food, watched terrible movies, took turns checking on Emma every 20 minutes. As midnight approached, they stood in the nursery watching their tiny warrior sleep. "Make a wish," Lena said as the clock struck 12. Mara didn't need to think. She wished for this ordinary moments strung together into a life, a family rebuilt from broken pieces strong enough to hold. "What did you wish for?" Jake asked. "Same thing I've wanted all along," Mara said. "To be here." "Well," Lena said, leaning against her sister for the first time in almost a year, "wish granted." Outside, fireworks lit up the Georgia sky, but inside the Jensen family was quiet together, beginning again. Emma stirred, but didn't wake, already used to a world where noise and love existed in equal measure. The next morning brought reality. Mara's leave was ending, decisions needed to be made. She sat with Lena while Jake was at the store, both of them watching Emma sleep. "I've been thinking," Lena said, "about forgiveness." Mara waited. I don't know if I can forgive you for missing my wedding. That broke something fundamental in me. I understand. But I can forgive you for choosing those children, for being who you are, for loving strangers enough to sacrifice us. Lena turned to look at her. It's who you've always been. I just wish I'd been enough to change that just once. You are enough. You were always enough. I was just too broken to see it. And now I see everything clearly. You, Emma, Jake, the life you've built, this is what matters. Everything else was just noise. Prove it. How? Move here. Not tomorrow, not dramatically. But get an apartment, be present, show up for the small stuff. Be Aunt Mara, who lives 10 minutes away, not Colonel Jensen, who might appear if the world doesn't need saving. It was a test, maybe the most important one. Mara thought about her life at Fort Moore, efficient, solitary, built around work. Then she looked at Emma, at Lena, at the possibility of something more. I'll start looking for places tomorrow. Really? Lena smiled, small, but genuine. Okay then. They sat quietly listening to Emma's tiny snores, rebuilding their relationship one moment at a time. The wedding would always be between them, a scar that might fade but would never disappear. But scar tissue, Mara knew from experience, was often stronger than what came before. Her phone buzzed, another crisis, another call to action. Without looking, she turned it off completely. Whatever it was, someone else would handle it. She had her own mission now measured not in saved lives, but in preserved moments, in showing up, in choosing family, even when the world offered more dramatic alternatives. Thank you, Lena said softly. For what? For choosing us. Finally. Mara reached over and took her sister's hand, careful not to disturb Emma. Thank you for giving me another chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, even heroes who don't know how to stop being heroes. I'm learning. Good. Because Emma's going to need an aunt who can teach her to be brave, but also how to stay. She'll have both. I promise. This time, when Mara made a promise, she meant it. No conditions, no exceptions, no priority missions that would pull her away. Just presence, patience, and the slow work of proving that people could change, that soldiers could become sisters again, that families could heal, even from the deepest wounds. Emma woke then, crying for food, for comfort, for the simple assurance that someone would always answer. Both sisters moved at once, then laughed at their synchronicity. Go ahead, Mara said. I'll make the bottle. It was a small division of labor, meaningless to anyone watching, but to them, it was everything. Partnership trust, the beginning of a new story, where they both could be heroes in quieter, more important ways. As Lena fed Emma humming the same lullaby their mother had sung, Mara stood in the doorway watching. This was her new mission, learning to find purpose in peace drama, in the everyday heroism, in simply showing up. The medal ceremony, the combat victories, the saved lives, they'd always be part of her story. But this was her future. A pink nursery in Georgia, a sister learning to trust again, a niece who would grow up knowing her aunt chose her over everything else the world could offer. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 6 months later, Mara stood in the doorway of her Palmetto Grove apartment watching the sunrise paint the Georgia sky in shades of pink and gold. The same colors as Emma's nursery, she thought, with a smile. Her phone sat silent on the counter. She'd stopped sleeping with it beside her bed 3 months ago. Another small victory in choosing different priorities. The apartment was modest, nothing like her military housing, but it was 10 minutes from Lena's house, and that made it perfect. The walls held photos, now Emma, at 1 month. 2 months every small milestone captured and displayed. The sparse efficiency of her former life had given way to something warmer, more lived in. Her doorbell rang at exactly 6:30 a.m. Jake stood there with Emma in her carrier, the baby wide awake and babbling at nothing in particular. "Lena's got that parent-teacher conference this morning," he said, transferring the diaper bag. "You sure you're good?" "Jake, I've handled armed insurgents. I think I can manage my 6-month-old niece." "Armed insurgents don't projectile vomit when you're wearing your last clean shirt." "Fair point." Emma reached for Mara, her chubby hands opening and closing in the universal baby signal for pick-me-up. She'd grown so much from that tiny fighter in the NICU to this bright-eyed, demanding little person who had completely reorganized everyone's world around her schedule. "Hey, warrior princess," Mara said, lifting Emma from the carrier. The baby immediately grabbed for her hair, a favorite game that had already cost Mara several haircuts. "She's been saying something that sounds like mama all morning," Jake said. "Lena's convinced it's just babbling, but I swear she's trying to talk." "Of course she is. Jensen women always have something to say." After Jake left, Mara settled into what had become their routine. Bottle first, then tummy time on the playmat she'd bought after extensive research into infant development. She'd approached Aunt Hood like a military operation, reading every book, consulting experts, preparing for contingencies. "Your mom thinks I'm overthinking it," she told Emma, who was currently fascinated by her own feat. "But preparation prevents poor performance, right?" Emma blew a spit bubble in response, which Mara took as agreement. The morning passed peacefully until Mara's phone rang. She almost ignored it. Wednesdays were Emma days, and she'd learned to guard them fiercely. But the caller ID showed Rodriguez. "Boss, we've got a situation." Her stomach tightened. Even though she'd transitioned fully to the family support program, old habits died hard. "What kind of situation?" "Thompson's wife left, took the kids. He's barricaded himself in his apartment with his service weapon." Mara looked at Emma, who was contentedly chewing on a teething ring. 6 months ago, she would have been out the door already. Now she had different priorities. "Call the crisis team, Rod. Follow the protocol we established." "He's asking for you specifically. Says you're the only one who understands." The weight of that settled on her shoulders. Thompson had been making progress, attending every session, working on rebuilding his relationship with his family. If he was at this point, something had gone catastrophically wrong. "I have Emma today." "I know. I wouldn't call if... Give me 20 minutes. She called Lena immediately, but it went to voicemail. She was in the conference. Jake was teaching. Sarah was out of town. Which left one option she'd hoped to avoid. Aunt Martha answered on the second ring. "Well, this is a surprise." "Martha, I need help." The older woman's tone shifted immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing with Emma or Lena, but I have a soldier in crisis, and I need someone to watch Emma for maybe 2 hours. The apartment complex on Veterans Way, I can be there in 15 minutes. Mara didn't ask how Martha knew where she lived. In small towns, everyone knew everything. Martha arrived in 12 minutes, taking Emma with the practiced ease of someone who'd raised 3 children. "Go," she said simply. "We'll be fine." The drive to Fort Moore felt like traveling between worlds. For 6 months, she'd managed to keep them separate, the military world where she helped broken soldiers, and the family world where she was learning to be a sister and aunt. Now they were colliding. Thompson's apartment complex was surrounded by military police, but they let her through immediately. Rodriguez met her at the entrance, his face grim. "He's on the 3rd floor. Won't talk to anyone but you. His wife filed for sole custody yesterday, citing his PTSD as making him an unfit father." "Jesus. Yeah. Everything we've been working on gone because some lawyer convinced her he's dangerous. Mara climbed the stairs slowly, her mind racing through de-escalation techniques. But when she reached Thompson's door, she threw out the playbook. "Thompson, it's Jensen. I'm coming in." "Don't. I'm not safe." "Neither was that cave in Colombia, but I went in anyway. Open the door." Silence, then the sound of locks disengaging. Thompson stood there, weapon visible, but not raised, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "They're taking my kids, Colonel." "No, they're not. We're going to fight this, but not with that." She nodded at the gun. "With lawyers, with documentation of your treatment, with proof that you're getting better." "Am I getting better?" She thought about her own journey, the daily choice to stay present instead of chasing the next crisis. "Some days. And that's enough." "You don't understand. Without them, I'm nothing." "I do understand. 6 months ago, I lost my sister because I chose a mission over her wedding. I thought I'd never get her back. But I'm watching her daughter this morning, was watching before Rod called. My point is, it's not over until you make it over." Thompson looked at her for a long moment, then slowly set the weapon on the table. "I don't know how to fight without fighting." "Then let me teach you, the same way you've been teaching me to stay instead of run." It took another hour to fully diffuse the situation, to get Thompson connected with resources to start the legal battle he'd need to wage. By the time Mara made it back to Palmetto Grove, Emma was napping in Martha's arms while the older woman watched some cooking show. "Crisis resolved?" Martha asked. "For now." "You're good at that, resolving crises." "Maybe too good. It becomes addictive being needed like that." Martha studied her. "Lena needs you too, just differently." "I know. Do you? Because from where I sit, you're still trying to prove yourself instead of just being present." Before Mara could respond, Emma woke up immediately, reaching for her aunt. The baby's face split into a huge grin when Mara picked her up, and suddenly nothing else mattered. Ma," Emma babbled, patting Mara's face. "She's been doing that all afternoon," Martha said. "I think she's trying to say your name." "She's trying to say Mama. All babies do." "Maybe. Or maybe she knows exactly who you are." That evening, Lena stopped by after work, looking exhausted. The parent-teacher conference had been about a student with behavioral issues, a military kid acting out because Dad was deployed again. "I suggested they contact your program," she said, collapsing on Mara's couch, while Emma played on the floor. "We can help. Rod's good with kids." It's strange how our worlds overlap now. Lena watched Emma army crawl toward a toy. 6 months ago, I couldn't imagine you in my daily life. Now I can't imagine you not here. Is that good? Most days. Some days I still get angry remembering. But then Emma smiles at you, or you show up with dinner when I'm too tired to cook, and the anger fades a little more. I know I can't undo missing your wedding. No, you can't. But you're not missing anything now, and that matters more than I expected it to. Emma chose that moment to pull herself up, using the coffee table standing on wobbly legs for 3 seconds, before falling back on her diaper-padded bottom. Both sisters gasped. "Did she just— She's been trying all week," Mara said. "The pediatrician said she's ahead of schedule." "Of course she is. Probably planning to run marathons by age 2. They watched Emma try again, determined and fearless. This time she stood for 5 seconds. "Jake's going to be devastated he missed this," Lena said, pulling out her phone to record the next attempt. "Speaking of Jake, how's he handling everything? You mean how's he handling you being around constantly?" Lena's tone was teasing, but not unkind. "He loves it, says Emma should know her whole family. Plus, you babysitting gives us actual date nights." "Happy to help. I know. That's the weird part. You're happy doing normal, boring family stuff. I keep waiting for you to get restless." Mara had been waiting for that too, for the itch to return, the need for adrenaline and purpose beyond the domestic. But watching Emma learn to stand was its own kind of mission, requiring patience and presence in ways combat never had. "I got a call last week," she admitted. "Private contractor offering triple my military salary for 6 months in Africa. Security detail for humanitarian workers." Lena went very still, and I said no before they finished the pitch. "Why?" "Because Emma's going to walk soon and I promised I'd be here for it." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You really have changed." "People keep saying that like it's surprising." "It is. You're Colonel Mara Jensen, the woman who once stayed in a firefight for 18 hours because extraction would have meant abandoning a strategic position. Stubbornness is your defining characteristic. Now it's working in your favor. I'm too stubborn to give up on us." Jake arrived then with takeout, and they settled into what had become their Wednesday tradition dinner together, passing Emma between them, talking about everything and nothing. It was domestic, in a way that should have felt constraining to someone used to worldwide deployments, but instead felt like coming home. "Lena's birthday is coming up," Jake mentioned casually, earning a glare from his wife. "I don't want a big thing," Lena said quickly. 30 is a big deal," Mara countered. "What do you want?" "Honestly, a day where nothing goes wrong, where we're all together and nobody has to leave for an emergency." It was a simple request that held years of disappointment. Mara made a mental note to ensure nothing would interfere with Lena's birthday, even if she had to turn off every phone in a 5-mile radius. 2 weeks later, Mara stood in Lena's backyard, watching chaos unfold. The small birthday gathering had somehow grown to include seemingly half of Palmetto Grove. Emma was being passed between admirers, Jake was manning the grill while discussing baseball with other teachers, and Lena was laughing at something Sarah was saying. "You did this," Martha said, appearing at her elbow. "I just sent a few invitations." "You gave her what she always wanted, her family together, celebrating without crisis." As if the universe had heard and decided to test them, Mara's phone buzzed. Morrison. She stepped away to answer. "Sir, I'm at a family event. I know, and I'm sorry, but there's been an incident. Rodriguez and Thompson's unit training accident, 3 casualties. Rodriguez is asking for you." The old Mara would have been moving already, duty calling louder than anything else, but she looked at Lena, radiant and happy, holding Emma, who was wearing a tiny party dress and babbling excitedly at everyone. "Send Davies," she said. "He's been shadowing me for months, he can handle it." "Mara, sir, with all due respect, this is exactly why military families fall apart. There's always another crisis, another emergency that seems more important. Davies can handle it, or Rodriguez can handle it himself. He's ready." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "You've really embraced this new role." "I've embraced having a life, sir. The job is part of it, not all of it." "Understood. Enjoy the party, Colonel." She turned off her phone completely and returned to the party. Lena caught her eye, a question in her expression. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." And for once it actually was. Emma took her first real steps that afternoon, toddling between Lena and Mara while everyone cheered. Jake caught it on video, the pure joy on both sisters' faces as Emma wobbled but didn't fall determined and proud. "Ma," Emma said, clearly reaching for Mara. "She's trying to say Mara," Lena said, her voice thick with emotion. "She knows you." "Of course she knows me. I'm the one who sneaks her extra banana when you're not looking." "I know about the banana." "Then you also know about the sweet potato." "Mara." They were laughing when Sarah insisted on taking a photo, the Jensen sisters with Emma between them. 3 generations of stubborn, strong women. Looking at it later, Mara would realize it was the first photo where she looked like she belonged. not like a visitor in her family's life. As the sun set and guests began leaving, Mara found herself on cleanup duty with Jake, while Lena put an overtired Emma to bed. "Thank you," Jake said suddenly. "For what? For choosing us, for staying, for becoming the sister she always needed you to be. I should have done it sooner. Maybe. But you're doing it now, and that's what matters." Lena appeared in the doorway. "She's down, completely exhausted from all that walking." "She's going to be a handful when she really gets mobile," Mara warned. "Good thing she has an aunt who can keep up." They stood together in the evening air, the debris of a successful party around them, and Mara realized this was her medal ceremony. Her mission accomplished not a single moment of heroism, but 1,000 small choices to be present. "I've been thinking," Lena said, "about forgiveness." Mara tensed, but Lena continued. "I forgive you. Completely. Not because missing my wedding was okay, but because holding on to that anger is preventing me from enjoying this having you here, watching Emma love you, feeling like a complete family for the first time since Mom died." "Lena, let me finish. I forgive you, but more importantly, I trust you. I trust that you'll be here for Emma's first day of school, her soccer games, her heartbreaks. I trust that you've really changed, that this is who you are now." Mara couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. She just pulled Lena into a hug, the kind they hadn't shared since before their mother's death, before everything got complicated. "I love you," Lena whispered. "My stubborn, heroic, finally present sister. I love you too. Always have, even when I was terrible at showing it." A year later, Mara stood in the same church where Lena had been married, but this time she was exactly where she belonged, beside her sister, as Emma toddled down the aisle as the world's most distracted flower girl, throwing petals at guests instead of on the ground. It was Jake's cousin's wedding, and they'd all been invited. Mara wore a dress Lena had helped pick out, soft blue, that complemented rather than matched the wedding party. She wasn't in the wedding, but she was present, fully and completely. "She's going for the cake," Jake whispered urgently, and they all turned to see Emma making a beeline for the reception table that had been set up too early. Mara scooped her up just before tiny hands could grab the elaborate frosting roses. "Nice try, warrior princess." "Mawa," Emma protested her version of Mara's name that had stuck, despite efforts to correct it. "Cake. After dinner, just like always." "No cake now." Lena appeared, taking Emma with practiced ease. "Someone missed her nap." "I tried, but she insisted on practicing walking the entire time." "Of course she did." Lena smiled at her daughter's determined expression. "She gets that from both of us." The ceremony was beautiful, and this time Mara got to witness the joy of a wedding without the shadow of absence. During the reception, she gave a toast that had nothing to do with her military service and everything to do with family, with showing up with the courage it took to stay. "To the bride and groom," she concluded, "may you always choose each other, especially when the world offers easier alternatives." Later, as Emma finally got her cake and proceeded to wear more than she ate, Sarah approached Mara. "You know what the difference is," she said. "What, a year ago you were trying to be here. Now you just are. You're not Colonel Jensen visiting her family. You're just Mara Emma's Aunt Lena's sister. You belong here." It was true. Somewhere in the daily routines, the little emergencies, the celebrations and challenges, she'd stopped being a soldier who was learning to be family, and became family who happened to be a soldier. Rodriguez called during the reception, and for once, Mara answered without anxiety. "Boss Thompson won his custody case. Full shared custody kids are coming home next week." "That's amazing, Rod." "He wanted me to thank you. Said you taught him that the hardest battles are the ones where you can't fight, just endure and adapt." "He taught me that too." You coming back to base Monday? Tuesday. Monday is Emma's swim class. Rodriguez laughed. Roger that. Tuesday it is. As she hung up, Mara watched Emma dance with Jake, standing on his feet, as he moved to the music. Lena was taking pictures, her face glowing with the simple happiness of an ordinary moment made precious by presence. Morrison had called it right she had changed. Not into someone different, but into someone complete. The soldier remained would always remain, but now it was balanced with sister-aunt family. The crisis calls still came, but they no longer defined her worth. Mawa dance? Emma demanded, reaching for her. Mara took her niece and joined the celebration, no longer the hero who saved strangers, but couldn't save herself, just a woman who'd learned that the greatest courage wasn't in leaving for noble causes, but in staying for ordinary ones. The music played, Emma laughed, Lena and Jake joined them, and for a moment 4 people who'd been broken in different ways moved together whole and healing. The wedding photographer captured it without being asked, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Later, much later, when Emma was grown, and asking about the aunt who'd shaped so much of her childhood, Lena would show her that photo. Your Aunt Mara was a hero, she'd say. Not because she saved people in faraway places, though she did that too, but because she came home. She chose us. She stayed. And Emma, stubborn and strong, like the women who raised her, would understand that heroism came in many forms, but the greatest was choosing love over glory, presence over purpose, family over everything else the world might offer. The story could have ended differently, with Mara accepting that contractor position with Lena's trust broken beyond repair, with Emma growing up hearing stories about an aunt she never really knew. Instead, it ended with a dance floor in Georgia, 4 people who'd learned that sometimes the hardest mission was the simplest one, just showing up. Mara had missed her sister's wedding for duty, had shattered the last promise that mattered in pursuit of heroism, that felt essential at the time. But she'd also learned that redemption wasn't a single grand gesture. It was Emma's first steps, Lena's gradual trust, Jake's acceptance, and 1,000 small moments where she chose to stay instead of leave. The military convoy that had approached the reception hall all those months ago had brought her back too late to save her sister's wedding, but just in time to save their relationship. Sometimes that's how heroism worked, not in perfect timing, but in showing up anyway, in staying, despite the damage, in proving that people could change if they wanted it enough. And Mara had wanted it more than any medal, any mission, any moment of glory. She'd wanted her family back, and she'd earned it the hardest way possible, one ordinary day at a time.